Okay, so in this video, we're going to add rocks. So in the original Dig Dug, there were a couple rocks on the screen. If you tunneled under the rock would drop. If it clips your character, you lose 1 life. If it hits one of the monsters, it defeats the monster. So we're going to add that. Now the problem is the rock is going to be sitting in one of the pre-made tunnels, but it's not actually going to be resting on the tiles, and here's why. Because the tiles, we turn them into triggers, which mean they don't actually support anything. So let me show you how that works. We're going to take the rock, and we're going to shrink it a little bit. Because we don't want it to be the size of a tile. And we're going to add 2 components. Physics 2D, rigid body 2D. That allows for velocity, gravity, that kind of thing. However, we're going to shut gravity off in a second, and I'll show you why. Add component, Physics 2D, Polygon Collider. So you can see the green outline, so it's form-fitting. That's why we didn't use Box Collider, we used Polygon Collider. That way things can't be clipped by the background blank space. Okay. So it can now detect collisions, and it now can have gravity. Well, watch what happens. See how you sort of fall there? Since the tiles are triggers, they don't support anything. So by default, we're going to have to get rid of gravity. So for now, we're going to set gravity to 0. Now where we're going to put this rock, we're going to put it at negative 5.75, and we're going to put it at 1.77. How do I know that? Simple. I came to the TileCon script, and in the update section is where we decide which tiles would get deleted to make room for the pre-made tunnels. So I simply chose this one. Okay, so now we have a rock. Now what we need is something to support the rock because, as I said, the tiles don't. So we got a couple things that we can do. We can't really, so we're going to put a new tile under it is what we're going to do. Okay, we're going to create a whole new tile that's going to go under it. But even that, it's not actually going to physically support it because we need it to, for one thing, when the dirt is dug from under the rock, we don't want the rock to drop immediately. In the original game, it would kind of rock back and forth for like 2 seconds and then fall. So even in the original game, it really wasn't using gravity, that there was this delay where it would kind of hover in midair and then fall. So no matter how you slice it, we can't actually support it and have gravity being applied to begin with. To keep like the old game, you really have to kind of fake it. So this is going to seem a bit tedious, but it's the only way to get around that conundrum is, how do you have that delay? So game object, create empty, and we'll call this rock support. I just want to make sure I did set gravity to 0. Okay. So rock support. Let's go to add component, Physics 2D, Box Collider 2D, and it won't be actually it will be a trigger. Because as we said, it's not actually supporting the rock. So let's see, this should be like 0.54. What we're going to do, instead of having this actually support the rock if you're really using gravity, instead you're going to touch this. It's going to destroy like any other tile. You won't see it because it doesn't have a sprite. It's just the collider box. When you destroy it, we're going to have a new variable that we haven't created yet. That variable will be set to a new value. That new value will say, okay, 2-second delay, now move the rock. Again, that sounds a little bit cumbersome. It's actually not that bad. So here's the thing. We already have the code in place to have this be destroyed. It's in the TileCon script. So let's go ahead and put TileCon on the rock. Rock support, excuse me, not the rock itself, the rock support. So the rock support is the Box Collider. It's a trigger. TileCon is on it. Let's take a look at what TileCon says. TileCon says, first of all, this will have no impact because this is based on tile position. Well, the rock support is not in any of these positions and won't be deleted. So that will have no impact. This will have an impact when we have the dig dug dude touch the object we want to be destroyed. So perfect, we can use exactly the same script to do what we want to do. We don't have to reinvent the wheel, but we do want to add an additional condition. So we said that when the rock support tile gets destroyed, we want to trigger a new variable. So what we're going to do is this. And again, this isn't the only way to do it. This is just a way to do it. I'm never going to say that this is the best way to do it. I'm simply showing you a way to do this, and then you can take the ball and run with it and improve upon it. So in the game flow script, because this doesn't really, this is connected to the GM object, but really it, like I said, it controls the overall flow of the game. We're going to create a new variable, but you're going to see a new word. So public static, and that's the new word. And this is going to be a string. And it's going to be called support gone. You could call it support destroyed, whatever. Support gone, and no, it's not gone to begin with. Okay. So why static? Static means that this variable is accessible through the entire scene. It's also accessible in any other scene to any object. Because just because you have a bunch of objects in the scene, they don't know about each other per se. You have to code everything. Like as we said in TileCon, you have to say, okay, are you being collided with by this object? So objects don't know about each other unless you explicitly tell the individual objects to look for collisions or whatever else. Okay, so public static string support gone equals now. So what we're going to do is in TileCon here, inside of this if statement, so between these squiggly brackets, we're going to add something. It's going to be another if statement. So if game object dot name, so what does that mean? This script is attached to a bunch of objects. So if the object this script is attached, oops, sorry, that's supposed to be name. So if this object is attached to something named rock support, then go ahead and the object will already be destroyed because this is happening, and make sure this is outside of this if statement. It should not be inside of it. It should be inside of this one, but outside of this one. So we always want the object to be destroyed if dig dug dude collides with it. But if the object that is being collided with, that dig dug dude is colliding with, so the object the script is attached to, if that's named rock support, we want something else to happen. We want that new variable that we just declared to be set to yes. So since it's declared in game flow, we have to say that dot support gone, and it gets set to y for yes. So gameflow dot support gone is set to yes. And now we're almost done. I guess we'll just add a script. Whoops, error message. In TileCon, in 51:42, game flow does not contain definition for support gone. Game flow, because I did not save it. Be very careful about that. Sometimes you'll make a change, you fix something, but if you don't actually save it, it doesn't make a difference. So this should go away on its own now. Yep, okay. So I just didn't save, so make sure you save. Okay, so support gone gets set to yes. Now, I like to test, as I mentioned in the other video, I believe, whenever I add a new collision, particularly when I'm adding conditions, I like to test it before I do anything else. So let's do this. In addition to setting that variable, let's also do debug.log, and we'll just type success since it's the only thing that we're typing into the log. So what's going to happen is down here, when the collision occurs with the rock support object, it should say success, in addition to changing that variable. So run it. So we move up, move over, and it says success. Perfect. All right. So a couple things. As you could see, we bumped the rock, so that's good to know. It went spinning away. So we need a couple things to happen. So first of all, this was a success. We are now checking specifically if we are we're checking specifically if we're colliding with the rock support. So putting a double / there, that just remarks this out. So rather than deleting the code, I just remark it out in case I need it at a future date. And again, with games like this being so, they're not resource intensive, then a little extra code doesn't hurt anything. I mean, you get games that are 30, 40, 50 gigabytes now. So, all right, so a few things we want to do. First of all, let's click on Dig Dug Rock. And just as we did before, we want to lock the z-axis. So we don't want it to roll around. So constrain the z-axis. Now, they'll still be able to move it, okay? When they hit it, it'll still move, but it won't rotate. So as far as stopping it from moving, I'm trying to think the best way to do this. Let's give it some mass. That way it weighs like nothing compared to the character. So we'll give it mass, and for the player, we'll get rid of their mass. First, okay, well, not seeing success anymore because we shut that off, okay? But as you can see, it's not rotating and it's not moving, so that's fine. Now, the timer. There's a couple ways to do a timer. I'm going to use something known as IEnumerator. So let's go ahead and create the new script. We'll call this, so create C#. We'll call this rock con for rock control. So we'll click on our rock, click on rock con. Let's open that up. So what do we want to do here? What we want to do is we want to have when that variable that we created, when this gets set to yes, we want to trigger a 2-second timer because we need to give your character a chance to get out from under the rock. And the exact timer, game balance. There is no absolute amount. Obviously, you want to be long enough for your character to move, 2.5 seconds, 3 seconds, whatever. So what we're going to do is we're going to actually do this a little bit out of order. We're going to create the coroutine first and then show you how you reference it. So IEnumerator. And then you name the coroutine. It's going to be called drop rock. So sorry, I always forget the order. So it's yield, return, new. Now, I usually try to tell you what every little thing does. I'm not going to this case because all that matters is you need all 3 words. What really matters is it leads up to this. Wait 4 seconds, and then it's measured in seconds. Let's do 3 seconds. So in other words, when I say to come down to this, it will wait 3 seconds and then do something. What are we going to do? We're going to set gravity to 1. So this script is attached to the dig dug rock. Let's make sure I attach it to the right object. Yes, okay. Want to make sure I didn't accidentally put it on the support. All right, so this script is attached to this object with these components. We want to access the rigid body. As I said, those are components. So we're going to do get component. Which component? Rigid body 2D. And now this is a little bit different. Actually, no, doesn't have to be. You can either directly add velocity, which does not show up here, or you can use gravity scale. So let's use that. So gravity scale, and we'll make it 1. So as you can see, you're just drilling down. You're saying what component, what attribute, what value. There is a velocity that's not shown here, so you could do dot velocity, but we'll do the gravity scale. So now we've created a coroutine, but we don't ever actually go to it. So in the update section, we're going to say if game flow, because that's where the variable is declared, if game flow dot support gone equals y, and again it gets set to y when you collide with it. So if that's set to y, we want to start coroutine, then a parenthesis, and then the name of the coroutine with its parentheses. See how it's there? If I hadn't written the coroutine first, you wouldn't see this here. That's why I did it out of order. I would have had to not write this line first anyways. So you're putting the name of the coroutine with its parentheses inside of another set of parentheses because C# really likes parentheses. So gameflow.supportGoard equals y start coroutine, but we don't want it to start over and over again. We only want it to start once. So that means we then need to set gameflow.supportGone back to now. And remember, when you're checking a value, it's a double equal sign. When you're setting the value, it's a single equal sign. Why? Because it's C#. Okay, so now what happens? When the dig dug dude collides with a tile, or rather collides with rock support, support gone gets set to yes, and then the rock, the dig dug rock sees that it's been set to yes, starts this coroutine. This coroutine waits 3 seconds and then adds a gravity scale. So what's going to happen is the rock's just going to keep dropping. So let's see if I saved everything. And then it's just a matter of how to get it to stop dropping. What I'll probably do is I'll have it just collide with a tile. Since we shrunk it in a little bit, there shouldn't be any left or right collisions. The first collision should be a vertical. So let's run this. And I'm going up. That should destroy it. And there we go. Almost perfect. And well, what we added is fine. What I meant is that we still need to detect the collisions. So we are going to detect, since we're already got a script for this, now we just have to look for a collision. So order really doesn't matter as long as it's not inside of anything else. Void on trigger enter 2D collider 2D other. Should look familiar. We did this on tiles. And we'll just do destroy game object. I think we'll actually wait on the destroying of the player and things like that until later in the series. So that should do it. So what went wrong? Not quite as simple as it seems because there doesn't seem to be any collisions until you remember that a tile is drawn in every single position. So even though there are no ground tiles here, in the start section, we do indeed, the start section, we create a whole bunch of tiles. It's not until the update section, which happens once per frame, do they get destroyed. In other words, there is a single frame where there are indeed tiles here, and there is indeed a rock here, and the collision occurs. So I could have edited out this mistake, but I'd rather you see this because sometimes it's not readily obvious. You're going to look at this and say there is no collision. You have to dig down into the sequence of events. And in the sequence of events, there is very briefly a rock and a tile there. So pretty easy to fix because with these components, a lot of components can actually be disabled. So in the start section of RockCon, so we want to get component. What component? Well, we said it is the Polygon Collider 2D, and it's enabled status, and we'll set that to false. We will then re-able that. When do we want to re-able it or enable it? So when do we want to set enable to true? Well, we can't wait for it to be triggered because you could actually walk through it. We still need it to stop you. So in the update section, we can enable it. Now, I do want to point something out. Because this happens every single frame, putting it here, make sure you set it to true, you're actually enabling it again and again and again and again. So technically it's a waste of processing, but once again, it's a very simple application, not a big deal. If you really want to, you could add another variable, have it set to no, have this enabled once, set the new variable to yes, and if it's set to yes, then you don't keep enabling it. Something like that. So, like I said, I just want you to be aware that technically you are indeed doing this over and over again, but it's not a big deal because it's a very low impact. It's not a resource intensive game, but it is good to know if you're doing something over and over again. So that should now work. So there it is. It does not get destroyed. Should 3 seconds later, drops, and it disappears. Now what you could actually do is you could add like an animation where it breaks up rather than just destroying it, but I didn't want this to go on too far since we had this particular video to go on too far since we had so much to cover. But now you've handled yet another major part of the game. So I think what we're going to do is in the next video we'll add the monsters and add pathing and that kind of thing. And what we'll do is after that we'll then add the collisions of the rock, because most of those collisions are going to be based on the other objects and not the rock itself. So if you have a monster walking around, the script to get destroyed by the rock is going to be on the monster. For your character to be destroyed by the rock, gonna put it on your character. Suppose we could do that. Actually, let's wait on that one because there is an extra complexity. Since these two are not triggers, then the routine that we've been using on trigger enter won't work. So rather than rushing through that, we'll look at that. Like I said, once we add the monsters, we'll show you how to do all the destruction. So that should do it for this one.